The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the weathered general store, and Sophia Morgan stepped down into the dusty street of Clifton, Arizona, carrying everything she owned in a single carpetbag that felt lighter than her heart. It was May of 1883, and the copper mining town sat nestled in the rugged mountains, a place where fortunes were made and lost with equal fervor. Sophia had neither fortune nor prospects, only the clothes on her back and $3 tucked into her worn boot. The dress she wore had been mended so many times that the original fabric was barely visible beneath the patches, but she held her head high as she surveyed the town that would either save her or break her completely. The advertisement she had answered promised employment as a seamstress, but when she arrived at the address listed, she found only an abandoned building with broken windows and a faded sign swinging in the hot wind. Her stomach dropped as reality set in. She had spent her last money on the stagecoach ticket, believing the promise of work would lead to a new beginning. Instead, she stood alone in a strange town with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Sophia walked the main street slowly, her eyes scanning every storefront for a help-wanted sign. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat trickled down her back beneath the heavy fabric of her dress. Men in dusty work clothes passed by, some tipping their hats, others staring with curiosity at the newcomer. She kept walking until her feet ached, but found nothing. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, panic crept into her chest like cold fingers. She had no money for lodging. She had no money for food. She had nothing. Sophia found herself standing near the edge of town, where a small creek wound its way through a grove of cottonwood trees. She sat down on a flat rock and allowed herself, for the first time since leaving St. Louis 3 weeks ago, to cry. The tears came hot and fast, washing tracks through the dust on her cheeks. She cried for her parents, dead 2 years now from influenza. She cried for the brother who had taken everything their parents left and gambled it away before disappearing into the night. She cried for herself, for the girl who had once believed life would be kinder than this. When the tears finally stopped, she was exhausted but no closer to a solution. The sky had turned the color of flame, orange and red streaking across the horizon. She would need to find somewhere to sleep, even if it was under these trees. Tomorrow she would figure out what to do next. Tomorrow she would find a way to survive. She was rising from the rock when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Sophia turned to see a rider coming down the path that ran alongside the creek. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad-brimmed hat casting his face in shadow. As he drew closer, she could make out more details. He was young, perhaps in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His clothing marked him as a working man, not a miner, but someone who spent his days outdoors. A rancher, perhaps. The rider pulled his horse to a stop when he saw her. For a moment they simply looked at each other, then he touched the brim of his hat in greeting. "Evening, miss," he said. His voice was deep and carried a gentleness that surprised her. "You look a bit lost, if you do not mind my saying so." Sophia straightened her spine, trying to summon what little dignity she had left. "I am new to town," she said carefully. "I came seeking employment, but the position I was promised seems to have been a fabrication." The cowboy's expression darkened. "That happens more than it should. People taking advantage of folks looking for honest work." He swung down from his horse with easy grace and stood a respectful distance away. "Name is Marcus Oakes. I have a small ranch about 3 miles north of here." "Sophia Morgan," she replied, clutching her carpetbag tighter. "I appreciate your courtesy, Mr. Oakes, but I should not keep you from wherever you were heading." Marcus pushed his hat back slightly, and she could see his eyes more clearly now. They were a warm brown, the color of honey in sunlight, and they regarded her with genuine concern. I was heading into town for supplies, but that can wait. Are you planning to camp out here by the creek? The question, asked so directly but without judgment, broke through her careful composure. I have no other choice, she admitted quietly. I spent my last money on the stagecoach ticket. I have nothing. She expected pity or perhaps the kind of leering suggestion she had learned to fear from some men. Instead, Marcus simply nodded as if she had told him something practical, like the time of day. Well, that is a problem we can solve, he said. My ranch is not much, but I have a spare room. Used to be my mother's sewing room before she passed. You would be welcome to stay there until you figure out your next step. Sophia took a step back. I cannot accept such an offer. I have no way to pay you, and I will not be indebted to anyone in the way some men expect. Marcus's face flushed slightly, and he shook his head firmly. I am not that kind of man, Miss Morgan. My mother raised me better than that. I am offering you a safe place to sleep and maybe a hot meal. Nothing more, nothing less. You can lock the door from the inside if it makes you feel safer. She studied him carefully, trying to read beyond his words. In her 22 years, Sophia had learned to be cautious, especially with offers that seemed too good to be true. But there was something in Marcus's steady gaze, something in the way he kept a respectful distance, that made her want to trust him. Why would you help a stranger? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on his horse's neck. My mother came to Arizona the same way you did, he finally said, following a promise that turned out to be empty. My father found her trying to sleep in a stable, gave her honest work and eventually his heart. She always said that kindness to strangers was the only way to honor the kindness she had been shown. I reckon I owe it to her memory to do the same. Something in Sophia's chest loosened at his words. What kind of work do you need done? I was not offering in exchange for work, Marcus said quickly. But if it makes you feel better about accepting help, I could use someone to mend some clothes and maybe cook proper meals instead of the burnt beans I have been living on. My mother tried to teach me, but I never had the knack for it. Sophia felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. Work she could do. Charity she struggled to accept, but honest labor in exchange for room and board felt right. I am an excellent seamstress, she said, and a fair cook, though I will need to know what supplies you have. Marcus smiled then, and it transformed his whole face. Then we have an arrangement. Come on, let me help you up. Bella here is gentle as a lamb. She will not mind carrying two. He helped her mount the horse first, his touch careful and brief, then swung up behind her. Sophia found herself acutely aware of his presence, the warmth of him at her back, the strength in the arm that reached around her to hold the reins. She clutched her carpetbag and tried to focus on the landscape as they rode. The path wound through the mountains, following the creek for a while before climbing into higher country. The air grew slightly cooler as they ascended, carrying the scent of pine and juniper. Marcus pointed out landmarks as they rode, his voice a comfortable rumble that helped ease her nerves. That peak there, that is Shannon Mountain. Good hunting up there in the fall. And that cluster of buildings you can see in the distance, that is the copper mine. Employs most of the men in Clifton. I tried mining for a year when I first came back from helping my uncle in Texas, but I could not stand being underground all day. Bought the ranch with what I saved and never looked back. You own the ranch? Sophia asked, surprised. Most cowboys she had encountered were hired hands, working for wages. Such as it is, Marcus said. About 200 acres, mostly grazing land. I run cattle, just a small herd, enough to make a living but nothing fancy. The house needs work. I keep meaning to fix the porch railing and repaint the shutters, but there never seems to be enough hours in the day. They crested a rise, and Sophia saw the ranch spread out below them in a small valley. The house was modest, built of adobe with a pitched roof and a porch that wrapped around the front. A barn stood nearby, painted red but fading to pink in places. A chicken coop, a small corral, and what looked like a vegetable garden completed the picture. It was simple, perhaps even humble, but it looked solid and well kept. "It is not much," Marcus said, and she could hear something defensive in his tone, as if he expected her to be disappointed. "It looks like a home," Sophia said honestly. "That is more than I have had in a long time." She felt him relax behind her. They rode down into the valley as the last light faded from the sky. Marcus helped her down from the horse and handed her the carpetbag. "Let me get Bella settled in the barn, then I will show you the house." Sophia stood in the yard, feeling the cool evening air wash over her. The exhaustion of the day caught up with her all at once, making her sway slightly on her feet. She steadied herself and looked up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. They seemed brighter here, away from town, scattered across the heavens like diamonds on velvet. Marcus returned from the barn and led her up the porch steps, which creaked under their weight. The front door opened into a main room that served as both kitchen and living area. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and simple furniture filled the space. It was clean but sparse, the home of a man who lived alone and saw no reason for decoration. "The spare room is through here," Marcus said, leading her to a door on the right side of the house. He pushed it open, and Sophia saw a small but tidy room with a single bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a dresser, and a chair by the window. "It has not been used much since my mother passed 3 years ago, but the sheets are clean. I washed them last month when my aunt came to visit." "It is perfect," Sophia said, and meant it. The room had a peaceful quality, filled with the lingering sense of a woman's touch in the careful stitching of the quilt and the lace curtain at the window. "Good," Marcus said, looking relieved. "The privy is out back, and there is a wash basin on the dresser. I will get a fire going and heat some water if you want to wash up before supper. We have got some bread and cheese, and I can fry up some salt pork." "Let me cook," Sophia said. "You have done enough already. Point me to your kitchen supplies, and I will make us something proper." Marcus looked like he wanted to protest, but something in her expression must have told him she needed this. She needed to contribute, to feel useful rather than simply grateful. He nodded and showed her where he kept his modest food stores. Sophia found flour, lard, some aging vegetables, eggs from the chickens, and the salt pork he had mentioned. While Marcus built up the fire in the stove, she assessed what she had to work with. It was not much, but it was enough. She mixed up biscuits and set them to bake, then fried the salt pork and made a gravy with the drippings. The vegetables she chopped and sautéed with some wild onions she found hanging in a bunch by the window. Marcus sat at the rough-hewn table and watched her work with an expression she could not quite read. When she glanced at him, he quickly looked away, as if embarrassed to have been caught staring. "I have not seen anyone use that kitchen like that since my mother died," he said quietly. "You move around it like you were born to it." "My mother was a wonderful cook," Sophia said, her hands steady as she worked despite the ache in her heart at the memory. "She taught me everything she knew. Said a woman who could cook well would never starve, and she was right. It is one of the few skills that has kept me going these past years." "Your parents are gone, then?" Marcus asked gently. 2 years now. Influenza took them within days of each other. My brother inherited everything, but he had expensive tastes and bad luck at cards. Last I heard, he was somewhere in Kansas, still looking for the big score that would fix everything. She plated the food and brought it to the table, sitting down across from Marcus. "I tried to make a living as a seamstress in St. Louis, But the competition was fierce, and I could barely afford rent on the tiny room I shared with two other girls. When I saw the advertisement for work in Arizona, it seemed like a sign, a chance to start over somewhere new. Marcus blessed the food with a simple prayer, then they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Sophia watched him take his first bite of the biscuits and saw his eyes widen. "Lord have mercy," he said. "These are better than my mother's, and I would have sworn that was impossible." Sophia felt warmth spread through her chest at the compliment. "You are just hungry. Everything tastes better when you are hungry." "No, madam," Marcus said seriously. "These are genuinely the best biscuits I have ever eaten. If you can cook like this every day, I might have to start paying you wages just to keep you from leaving." She laughed, a real laugh, the first one she had managed in weeks. "I have nowhere to leave to, so I think you are safe." They finished the meal while Marcus told her more about the ranch. He spoke of his plans to expand the herd next year, to fix up the house properly, maybe build a better barn. His words painted a picture of a man with dreams, but also the patience to achieve them slowly and steadily. There was no bravado in him, no wild schemes or get-rich-quick fantasies. Just honest work and humble aspirations. After supper, Sophia insisted on cleaning up while Marcus went out to check on the animals one last time. When he returned, she was just drying the last plate. "You must be exhausted," he said. "I will let you get some rest. If you need anything in the night, my room is on the other side of the house. Just holler." "Thank you, Mr. Oakes," Sophia said, "for everything. I do not know what I would have done if you had not come along when you did." Marcus shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Just Marcus, please. And you do not need to thank me. Like I said, it is what anyone decent would do." But Sophia knew better. In her experience, decent men were rarer than gold nuggets. She had met plenty of men who would have taken advantage of a woman in her situation. Marcus Oakes was something special, even if he did not seem to realize it. She retired to the small bedroom and locked the door as Marcus had suggested, not because she feared him, but because old habits died hard. She unpacked her meager belongings, hanging her 2 spare dresses in the wardrobe and placing her mother's Bible and her father's pocket watch on the dresser. These were her only treasures, the only pieces of her old life she had managed to hold on to. Sophia lay down on the bed, expecting to fall asleep immediately from sheer exhaustion. Instead, she found herself staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. What was she doing here? Could she really trust this stranger who had been so kind to her? What if his kindness had conditions she had not yet discovered? But even as the worried thoughts circled, she felt something else too. Hope. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope that maybe things could be different. Maybe Clifton, Arizona, would be the fresh start she so desperately needed. She finally drifted off to sleep with the sound of crickets chirping outside her window and the scent of sage drifting on the night breeze. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through the lace curtains and the sound of a rooster crowing. For a moment, she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was. Then memory flooded back, along with a surge of relief that yesterday had not been a dream. She really was here, safe in this little room, with at least a temporary reprieve from her struggles. She dressed quickly in one of her patched dresses and braided her dark hair, winding it into a neat bun at the nape of her neck. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found the main room empty but the front door standing open to let in the morning breeze. Through the doorway, she could see Marcus working in the corral, training a young horse on a lead line. Sophia set about exploring the kitchen more thoroughly in daylight. She found it surprisingly well stocked for a bachelor's home. Clearly, Marcus made regular trips to town for supplies. She started coffee and began mixing batter for flapjacks, using some of the eggs and the last of the milk she found in the cold box. She was flipping the flapjacks when Marcus appeared in the doorway, his hair damp as if he had dunked his head in the water trough. He stopped short when he saw her at the stove. "I was going to let you sleep as long as you needed," he said. "You did not have to get up and cook." "I am used to rising early," Sophia said. "And I told you I want to earn my keep. Sit down. Breakfast is ready." They fell into an easy rhythm over the meal. Marcus told her about the young horse he was training, a 2-year-old gelding with spirit but a good temperament. "Fellow in town is paying me to break him," he explained. "I take on training jobs sometimes to supplement the cattle income. Horses are easier to handle than people in my experience." Sophia smiled at that. "I have always thought the same thing. Animals are honest. They do not pretend to be something they are not." After breakfast, Marcus showed her around the ranch properly. The barn was larger inside than it looked from outside, with stalls for 6 horses, though only 3 were currently occupied. Bella, his reliable mare, a young gelding he was training, and an older stallion that Marcus clearly loved. "This is Ranger," he said, stroking the stallion's nose affectionately. "He was my father's horse. I probably should not keep him any more since he is too old for hard work, but I cannot bring myself to part with him." "Why would you?" Sophia asked. "He is family." Marcus looked at her with something like wonder in his eyes. "That is exactly what he is. Most people think I am foolish, keeping an animal that does not earn his feed." "Most people do not understand loyalty," Sophia said simply. They moved on to inspect the chicken coop, where a dozen hens scratched and pecked industriously. The garden was overgrown with weeds, and Marcus looked at it with frustration. "I started it in the spring with good intentions," he said, "but I am better with animals than plants. I think half of what I planted died, and weeds took over the rest." "I could tend it," Sophia offered. "My mother kept a kitchen garden. I know how to coax vegetables from stubborn soil." "That would be wonderful," Marcus said, and his relief was palpable. "Take whatever time you need with it. There are tools in the barn." They walked back to the house, and Marcus hesitated at the porch steps. "I need to ride out and check the cattle today," he said. "Will you be all right here alone? I will be back before dark." "I will be fine," Sophia assured him. "I have plenty to keep me busy. I noticed you have a pile of mending in the corner of your room." Marcus had the grace to look embarrassed. "I meant to get around to that." "Now you do not have to. Go check your cattle. I will have your shirts mended by the time you get back." Sophia spent the day in productive solitude. She attacked the mending pile first, her needle flying through tears and missing buttons with practiced efficiency. Most of the garments were work shirts and trousers, worn but well made. She could see where Marcus had attempted his own repairs in some places, the stitches large and uneven but earnest. It made her smile. In the afternoon, she ventured into the garden with a hoe and began the process of reclaiming it from the weeds. The work was hot and dirty, but satisfying. She uncovered tomato plants struggling to survive, beans that had somehow persevered despite neglect, and even a few squash vines. With some care, she thought she could save most of it. As she worked, Sophia found her mind drifting to Marcus. He was unlike any man she had known before. The men in St. Louis had been either clerks who looked down on working women or laborers who made crude suggestions. Even the few gentlemen she had encountered had treated her with a kind of dismissive politeness that made her feel invisible. Marcus saw her. Really saw her. He listened when she spoke and seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. And he had asked nothing of her beyond honest work, even though she had been completely at his mercy yesterday. She was not foolish enough to mistake kindness for something more, but she could not deny the flutter she felt in her chest when he smiled at her. It had been so long since anyone had made her feel safe and valued. She would need to be careful. Getting attached to this place, to this man, could only lead to heartache when she eventually had to move on. But even as she told herself this, she knew it was already too late. Something had taken root in her heart the moment Marcus had offered to help her, and it was growing stronger with every hour she spent in his home. Marcus returned just as the sun was setting, riding Bella up to the barn with the satisfied look of a man who had completed a good day's work. Sophia met him at the porch, wiping her dirty hands on the apron she had found in the kitchen. "How were the cattle?" she asked. "Good. Found them in the north pasture, all accounted for. One of the cows looks like she might drop her calf any day now." He dismounted and led Bella toward the barn, then stopped and turned back to look at the garden. "Did you do all that today?" Sophia followed his gaze. The garden did look dramatically different, neat rows visible now where before there had been only chaos. "It still needs more work, but I made a start." "It looks incredible," Marcus said, shaking his head in amazement. "You have done more in one day than I managed all month." Over supper, a hearty stew that Sophia had made from supplies she found in the pantry, they talked more easily than the night before. Marcus told stories about growing up in Texas before his family moved to Arizona when he was 16. Sophia shared memories of her childhood in St. Louis, the good years before her parents got sick. "What made you answer an advertisement for work so far from home?" Marcus asked as they finished eating. "You must have had options in St. Louis." Sophia was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. But something about Marcus's steady presence invited honesty. "I had no good options," she finally said. "After my parents died and my brother took everything, I was on my own. I found work as a seamstress in a factory, but the pay was terrible and the conditions worse. When that closed down, I tried taking in piecework at home, but there were too many women competing for the same jobs. I could barely afford to eat, let alone pay rent." She stared down at her hands, roughened from years of needle work. Men started making offers. The kind of offers desperate women sometimes accept. But I could not do it. I could not give up that last piece of myself, even for survival. So when I saw the advertisement for a seamstress in Arizona, I spent everything I had on the ticket. I thought it was my last chance to make an honest living. When she looked up, she found Marcus watching her with an expression of such compassion that tears prickled at the corners of her eyes. "You are a brave woman, Sophia Morgan," he said quietly. "It takes courage to keep your integrity when the world is trying to steal it from you." "Or stupidity," she said, trying to lighten the mood. "A smarter woman might have accepted one of those offers and at least kept a roof over her head." "No," Marcus said firmly. "A smarter woman might have survived, but she would have lost something more important than shelter. You made the right choice, even if it was the harder one." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of shared understanding hanging in the air between them. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat and stood, beginning to clear the dishes. "I should tell you something," he said, his back to her as he worked. "I own this land free and clear. 200 acres, like I said. I have been running cattle for 5 years now, and I have built up a decent herd. I am not wealthy, not by any means, but I am stable, comfortable. I tell you this because I want you to understand that I am not looking for a wife who will bring money or property to the marriage. I can take care of myself." Sophia's breath caught. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus turned to face her, and she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "Because I want you to know that if you choose to stay here, it is not because you need my land or my cattle. It is not because you are desperate and have nowhere else to go. I have seen too many marriages built on necessity, where neither party really wants the other, they just need what the other can provide." He took a step closer, his hands clenched at his sides as if he was working up courage. "I know we have only known each other 2 days. I know it is too soon for me to speak like this, but I have to be honest with you, Sophia. From the moment I saw you sitting by that creek, looking so lost, and yet so determined not to give up, something in me recognized something in you. I do not know if you believe in fate or divine providence or just plain coincidence, but I do not think it was an accident that I came along that path at exactly that moment." Sophia stood slowly, her heart hammering in her chest. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I would like you to stay," Marcus said. "Not as hired help, not as charity, but as a woman considering whether this place, whether I, might be worth building a life with. I am not asking you to decide anything today or even this month. I am just asking you to stay long enough to find out if what I think I see between us is real." She should have been frightened by such directness, such quick emotion. Any rational woman would have been skeptical. But Sophia had learned to trust her instincts, and every instinct she had was telling her that Marcus Oakes was offering her something precious and rare. Honesty without games, possibility without pressure, a chance to choose love rather than settling for security. "I have nothing," she said, needing him to understand fully what he was proposing. "No dowry, no property, no family connections. I am truly penniless. If I stay, I bring you nothing but myself." Marcus's face broke into a smile, slow and warm as sunrise. "Good," he said. "Then I know you want me, not my land." The words hung in the air between them, powerful in their simplicity. Sophia felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of relief, of hope, of feeling seen and valued for exactly who she was. "I would like to stay," she whispered. "I would like to find out if this is real." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away and gently wipe the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. His touch was careful, reverent, as if she were something precious that might break. "We will take it slow," he promised. "I will not rush you or press you for anything you are not ready to give, but I want you to know that I am serious about this, about you." Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She had come to Arizona with nothing, expecting nothing, and had somehow found everything she had been searching for without even knowing it. The days that followed fell into a comfortable pattern. Sophia rose early to cook breakfast, then spent her mornings tending the garden and completing household tasks. Marcus worked with the cattle and horses, often riding out for hours but always returning by evening. They took their meals together, and their conversations grew deeper and more personal with each passing day. Sophia learned that Marcus's father had died when he was 20, leaving him to care for his mother and the small ranch. He had worked tirelessly to keep it going, sometimes taking odd jobs in town to make ends meet. His mother had lived another 5 years before pneumonia took her, leaving Marcus alone in the house they had built together. "I thought about selling," he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "After Ma died, the house felt too empty, but I could not do it. This land represents everything my parents worked for. Giving it up felt like betraying their memory." "Loneliness is a hard burden to carry," Sophia said softly. She was sitting in the chair next to his, close enough that their elbows almost touched on the armrest between them. "It was," Marcus agreed, "until you came along." He said such things easily now without embarrassment. Small declarations that made Sophia's heart flutter. She was growing used to the way he looked at her, as if she were the answer to questions he had been asking for years. Marcus learned about Sophia's childhood, about the loving home she had known before illness had stolen it away. She told him about her father, a bookkeeper who had taught her to read and write, and her mother, whose gentle strength had shaped Sophia into the woman she had become. "They would have liked you," she said one day as they worked together to repair a section of fence. Marcus was setting new posts while Sophia handed him tools. "My father always said that a man's character showed in how he treated those who could do nothing for him. You are the kind of man he would have respected." Marcus paused in his work and looked at her, sweat gleaming on his forehead from the exertion. "That means more to me than you know." As the weeks passed, their attraction grew impossible to ignore. Sophia found herself watching Marcus when he worked, admiring the strength in his shoulders and the capable way he handled every task. She noticed how his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how his hands were rough from work but infinitely gentle when he helped her over rough ground or handed her down from the wagon. Marcus made no secret of his own attraction. His eyes followed her movements around the house and garden. He found excuses to be near her, to brush against her shoulder as he reached for something or to stand close while she cooked. But he never pushed, never demanded anything she was not ready to give. His restraint only made her want him more. One evening in late June, after they had finished supper, Marcus asked if she would like to go for a walk. They strolled through the evening coolness toward the creek that ran along the edge of his property. The water burbled over rocks, creating a peaceful music that seemed to make conversation easier. "I have been thinking," Marcus said, his hands shoved into his pockets as they walked, "about what I said that first night, about taking things slow." Sophia's heart began to beat faster. "Yes. I want you to know that I meant it. I am not trying to rush you into anything." He stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. "But I also do not want you to think that my feelings are uncertain. They are not. Every day you are here, I become more sure that you are the woman I have been waiting for." Sophia reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact, and she felt him tremble slightly at her touch. "I am sure too," she said. "I have been sure for a while now. I was just afraid to say it, afraid that admitting it would somehow make it disappear." Marcus lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "I am not going anywhere, and I hope you are not either." "I am not," she promised. He pulled her closer, and Sophia went willingly, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, and feel the rise and fall of his breathing. His arms came around her, holding her securely but not too tightly, as if he understood that she needed to feel safe more than she needed to feel possessed. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms while the creek sang its ancient song and the stars slowly emerged overhead. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus cupped her face in his hands and looked at her with such tenderness that Sophia felt tears well up again. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it is fast, and maybe I should wait longer to say it, but I have never been good at hiding what I feel. I love you, Sophia Morgan." "I love you too," she whispered, and knew with absolute certainty that it was true. Somehow, in just 6 weeks, this quiet cowboy had claimed her heart completely. Marcus leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, a kiss full of promise rather than demand. Sophia's eyes drifted closed as she savored the warmth of his lips, the scratch of his beard against her skin, the way his hands trembled slightly as they held her face. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Marcus rested his forehead against hers and laughed softly. "I have been wanting to do that since the day we met," he admitted. "Then why did you wait so long?" Sophia teased. "Because I wanted it to mean something. I wanted you to be sure." He pulled back to look at her. "Are you sure, Sophia, about me, about us?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and that night, for the first time, Sophia did not lock her bedroom door. Not because she expected Marcus to enter, but because she trusted him completely not to. The next morning, Marcus rode into town and returned with a small velvet box. He found Sophia in the garden, pulling weeds from around the tomato plants. She stood up when she heard him approach, shading her eyes against the morning sun. "I have something for you," Marcus said. He looked nervous, almost boyish, as he opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond. "It was my grandmother's. My mother gave it to me before she died and told me to give it to the woman who made me want to stop being alone." Sophia's breath caught. "Marcus." "Marry me," he said. "I know it is fast. I know most people would say we should wait longer, get to know each other better. But I do not need more time to know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up to your smile every morning. I want to sit across the table from you at every meal. I want to build a future with you, raise children with you, grow old with you." He dropped to one knee in the dirt of the garden, holding the ring up to her. "Will you be my wife, Sophia? Will you let me spend the rest of my days proving that you made the right choice?" Sophia dropped to her knees in front of him, heedless of the dirt staining her dress. She took his face in her hands and kissed him hard, trying to pour all of her love and certainty into that kiss. "Yes," she said when they finally broke apart. "Yes, I will marry you." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. They remained kneeling in the garden, holding each other and laughing with the sheer joy of it, until the chickens came over to investigate what all the fuss was about. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Clifton. Marcus had a few friends in town who came to witness the ceremony, along with his aunt and uncle from Phoenix, who made the long journey to see their nephew wed. Sophia had no family to invite, but Marcus's family welcomed her with open arms, his aunt crying openly as she hugged Sophia after the ceremony. "You have made him so happy," she whispered. "I have not seen him smile like this since before his mother passed." Sophia wore a dress that she had sewn herself from fabric Marcus had bought in town, simple white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had woven wildflowers into her hair, and Marcus told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The wedding night was gentle and sweet. Marcus was patient and tender, making sure Sophia felt safe and cherished. They took their time learning each other, and when they finally came together as husband and wife, it felt right in a way that transcended the physical. It felt like coming home. The weeks that followed were blissful. Sophia had never known that marriage could be like this, built on genuine affection and respect rather than duty or necessity. Marcus consulted her on decisions about the ranch, valued her opinions, and made her feel like a true partner rather than property. Together they worked to improve the ranch. The garden flourished under Sophia's care, providing fresh vegetables that she preserved for the winter. She took over more of the household duties, but Marcus never expected her to do everything alone. He helped with cooking when he came in early, and he insisted on washing dishes so her hands would not get too rough. "You need those hands for sewing," he said when she protested. "That is skilled work. Washing dishes is something anyone can do." In late summer, Marcus traded 2 steers for a milk cow, knowing that Sophia wanted to make butter and cheese. He built her a spring house by the creek to keep things cool, working on it in his spare time until it was finished. The look of delight on her face when he showed her the completed building made every hour of effort worthwhile. As autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures to the high desert, Sophia began to suspect that she might be pregnant. She waited to be sure before telling Marcus, but when her monthly courses failed to appear for the 3rd time, She could no longer deny it. She told him one evening after supper, simply and directly, "I think I am going to have a baby." Marcus froze with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down carefully and looked at her with wonder dawning in his eyes. "Truly, truly," she confirmed. "I am about 3 months along, I think." Marcus let out a whoop of joy that probably scared the chickens and swept Sophia up into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen until she laughingly begged him to put her down. "We are going to have a baby," he kept repeating, as if he could not quite believe it. "A son or daughter. A family." "Are you happy?" Sophia asked, though his reaction had already answered the question. "Happy." Marcus pulled her close and kissed her deeply. "I am beyond happy. I am blessed. I have you, and now we will have a child. What more could any man want?" Marcus became even more attentive during her pregnancy, insisting that she not overdo things and worrying constantly about her health. Sophia found his concern endearing, even when it was excessive. She continued to work in the garden and help around the ranch, but Marcus took over the heavier tasks without being asked. Winter came to the Arizona mountains, bringing cold nights and occasional snow. Marcus made sure the house was well stocked with firewood and spent his evenings by the fire with Sophia, often reading aloud from the few books they owned or simply talking about their plans for the future. They discussed names for the baby, going back and forth on possibilities. If it was a boy, Marcus wanted to name him after his father. Sophia agreed, liking the idea of honoring Marcus's family. If it was a girl, they settled on Sarah after Sophia's mother. As spring returned to the mountains, bringing new life to the land, Sophia's time drew near. Marcus was almost frantic with worry, afraid to leave her alone even for short periods. He made arrangements with their nearest neighbor, a widow named Mrs. Hartwell who lived 2 miles away, to come and assist when Sophia went into labor. The baby arrived on a warm April morning in 1884, just over a year after Sophia had first stepped off the stagecoach in Clifton. The labor was long and difficult, but when Sophia finally held her son in her arms, she knew that every moment of pain had been worth it. Marcus cried when he held his son for the first time, tears of joy streaming down his face as he marveled at the tiny fingers and perfect features. "He is beautiful," he whispered, "just like his mother." "Matthew," Sophia said softly, naming him after Marcus's father. "Matthew Marcus Oakes." "It is perfect," Marcus said. "He is perfect." Those first weeks with a newborn were exhausting but wonderful. Marcus proved to be a devoted father, taking over household tasks so Sophia could rest and recover. He would pace the floor at night with Matthew when the baby was fussy, singing off key lullabies that somehow always seemed to work, watching Marcus with their son. Sophia often found herself overwhelmed with gratitude for the path that had led her here. If that promised job in Clifton had been real, she might have found employment but never would have met Marcus. If he had not ridden past the creek at exactly the right moment, she might have made very different choices out of desperation. Sometimes she thought about the woman she had been, standing penniless and alone in a strange town. That woman had been so afraid, so certain that her life was over before it had really begun. She wished she could go back and tell that frightened girl that everything would be all right, that the best part of her life was just beginning. As Matthew grew from infant to baby to toddler, the ranch prospered. Marcus's careful management and hard work paid off as the herd grew. He was able to hire a young man from town to help with the heavy work, which gave him more time to spend with his family. Sophia's garden became famous in Clifton for its bounty. She began selling her excess produce in town, along with the preserves and pickles she made. The extra money allowed them to make improvements to the house, adding a proper window to the kitchen and replacing the worn porch steps. When Matthew was 2, Sophia became pregnant again. This time she was less anxious, knowing what to expect. Their daughter Sarah was born in the winter of 1886, arriving during a snowstorm that left Marcus unable to fetch Mrs. Hartwell. He delivered his own daughter with Sophia talking him through it, both of them laughing and crying when they heard Sarah's first lusty cry. "We make a good team," Marcus said as he placed their daughter in Sophia's arms. "The best," Sophia agreed. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch continued to grow, and Marcus bought adjacent land when it became available, expanding their holdings to 400 acres. They hired more help, which allowed Marcus to focus on the horses he loved training. He developed a reputation for producing reliable, well-mannered mounts, and people came from as far away as Phoenix to buy his horses. Sophia found fulfillment not only in raising their children, but also in being part of the community. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society at church and helped organize social events in town. She made friends with other ranch wives, women who understood the challenges and rewards of frontier life. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Marcus surprised Sophia with a trip to Phoenix. They left the children with his aunt and uncle for 3 days and stayed in a real hotel, eating in restaurants and walking the streets like carefree newlyweds. "Thank you," Sophia said as they sat on a bench in the town square, watching people pass by, "for everything you have given me." "I should be thanking you," Marcus countered. "You took a chance on a lonely cowboy who did not have much to offer except a small ranch and a big heart." "You offered me exactly what I needed," Sophia said, taking his hand. "Love without conditions, partnership without inequality, a home built on respect and genuine affection. Those things are rarer than gold, Marcus. You gave me everything that matters." Marcus kissed her there in the square, not caring who saw them. "You brought me back to life," he said. "I was just existing before you came along. You taught me how to truly live again." They returned to the ranch renewed and recommitted to the life they were building together. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children's growth. Matthew proved to have his father's gift with animals, spending hours in the barn with the horses. Sarah was more like Sophia, preferring quiet activities like reading and sewing. In 1888, Sophia gave birth to their 3rd child, a son they named Daniel. He was a mischievous child who kept them constantly on their toes, but his laughter filled the house with joy. Marcus built an addition onto the house to accommodate their growing family, 3 new bedrooms that gave each child their own space. The ranch was thriving now, one of the most successful in the region. Marcus employed 4 full-time ranch hands and 2 men who worked specifically with the horses. He could have afforded to hire help for Sophia with the house, but she preferred to do most of the work herself, finding satisfaction in caring for her family directly. One evening, when the children were finally asleep and the house was quiet, Marcus and Sophia sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. It was a scene they had witnessed countless times, but it never grew old. "You remember that first night?" Marcus asked. "When I found you by the creek, how could I forget?" Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I thought my life was over. I had no idea it was actually just beginning." "I knew," Marcus said. "The moment I saw you, something in me just knew. I could not have explained it then, but I felt it. You were meant to be here. We were meant to find each other." Sophia lifted her head to look at him. "Do you ever regret it, taking in a penniless stranger? Your life would have been simpler without me." Marcus laughed and pulled her into his arms. "Simpler maybe, but empty, meaningless. You gave my life purpose, Sophia. You and our children are the reason I get up every morning and the reason I thank God every night. I have never regretted a single moment." Not even when Daniel put that frog in your boot, Sophia teased. All right, maybe I regretted that specific moment, Marcus admitted with a grin. But overall, no regrets. Not one. They sat together in the gathering darkness, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing each other deeply. Sophia thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. The losses and hardships that had seemed unbearable at the time had led her exactly where she needed to be. She thought about the woman she had told Marcus she was on that first day, admitting that she was penniless and had nothing to offer. At the time, it had felt like a shameful confession, an acknowledgement of her failure to make something of herself. But Marcus had seen it differently. He had seen her honesty as a gift, proof that any affection between them would be genuine rather than mercenary. His response had changed everything, transforming what she saw as weakness into strength. Good, then you want me, not my land. Those simple words had freed her to love without calculation, to choose with her heart rather than her head. And in doing so, she had found a happiness she had never imagined possible. Years continued to pass in their small valley. Matthew grew into a responsible young man who shared his father's love of ranching. At 18, he was already talking about expanding the cattle operation even further, and Marcus encouraged his ambitions. Sarah blossomed into a thoughtful young woman who loved teaching the younger children at church. Daniel remained the family's wild spirit, always getting into scrapes, but possessing such genuine charm that it was impossible to stay angry with him for long. In 1893, when Sophia was 32 and Marcus was 36, they welcomed their fourth and final child, a daughter they named Emma. She was an unexpected blessing, arriving 10 years after Daniel, but she completed their family in a way none of them had realized was missing. Marcus, now a successful rancher with substantial holdings, could have sold the ranch and moved to a city where his children would have access to better schools and social opportunities. But neither he nor Sophia ever seriously considered it. This land was home, not just because of the house and barn and acres they had worked so hard to improve, but because it was where they had found each other and built a life together. On their 15th wedding anniversary, their children planned a surprise celebration. Matthew and Sarah had secretly invited friends and neighbors to the ranch, transforming the barn into a party venue with lanterns and decorations. When Marcus and Sophia arrived, expecting a quiet family dinner, they were greeted by dozens of people applauding and cheering. "We wanted to celebrate you," Matthew explained, grinning at his parents' shocked expressions. "You two have shown all of us what real love looks like. That is worth celebrating." Throughout the evening, people came up to share what Marcus and Sophia's example had meant to them. Young couples spoke of how they had modeled their own marriages on the partnership they saw in the Oaks family. Older couples admitted that watching Marcus and Sophia had renewed their own commitment to each other. "You two give the rest of us hope," Mrs. Hartwell said, her eyes bright with tears. "In a hard land where so many marriages are just about survival, you prove that it is possible to have real love too." When everyone had gone home and the children were finally asleep, Marcus and Sophia stood in their bedroom, helping each other undress with the easy familiarity of long marriage. 15 years, Sophia mused. "It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." "I know exactly what you mean," Marcus said. He pulled her into his arms and she went willingly, resting against his chest the way she had that first night by the creek. "Sometimes I still cannot believe you are really here, that this is my life." "Believe it," Sophia said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I am here and I am not going anywhere. You are stuck with me, Marcus Oaks." "Best fate I could imagine," he murmured into her hair. They made love that night with the passion and tenderness that had always characterized their physical relationship. Age and familiarity had not diminished their desire for each other. If anything, it had deepened. They knew each other's bodies as well as they knew their own, understood what pleased and what comforted. Afterward, lying tangled together in the sheets, Sophia felt Marcus's hand resting on her hip, his thumb tracing idle circles on her skin. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "That creek," he said. "The one where I found you. I ride past it sometimes when I am checking the north pasture, and I always stop for a minute, just to remember." "Remember what?" "How close I came to not taking that path that day. I almost went a different route, through the hills instead. But something made me choose the creek path. Call it instinct or luck or divine intervention, but whatever it was, it changed my entire life." Sophia rolled over to face him, propping herself up on one elbow. "You know what I think about sometimes? I think about that fake advertisement. The one that brought me here on a lie. At the time, I was so angry and frightened. But now I wonder if it was somehow meant to be. If that had been a real job, I would have worked for someone else, lived somewhere else. I never would have been sitting by that creek at exactly the moment you rode past." "So you are saying we should thank the scoundrel who placed that fake advertisement," Marcus said with a smile. "Maybe," Sophia laughed. "In a strange way, his dishonesty led to something honest and true. Us." "I will settle for just being grateful," Marcus said. "Grateful for every twist of fate that brought us together. Grateful for every day I get to spend with you." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had done countless nights before and would do countless nights to come. The seasons continued their eternal cycle, and the Oakes family grew and changed with them. Matthew married a sensible young woman named Elizabeth, and they began building their own house on the northern section of the ranch. Marcus deeded them 200 acres as a wedding gift, pleased to see his son putting down roots on the family land. Sarah surprised everyone by announcing her intention to become a teacher. She attended normal school in Phoenix and returned to Clifton to teach at the one-room schoolhouse. She married later than most women, at 25, choosing a banker from town who appreciated her intelligence and independence. Daniel, true to form, was the adventurous one. He announced at 17 that he wanted to join a cattle drive to Montana and see something of the world beyond Arizona. Marcus and Sophia were hesitant but ultimately gave their blessing, understanding that their son needed to find his own path. He wrote letters describing his adventures, and Sophia kept everyone, treasuring the connection to her wandering boy. Emma, the baby of the family, grew up surrounded by love and stability. She was a joyful child who seemed to carry sunshine with her wherever she went. Marcus doted on his youngest daughter, and Sophia often teased him about how he could never say no to Emma. As 1900 arrived, bringing a new century, Marcus and Sophia found themselves settling into the contentment of middle age. The ranch ran smoothly under their experienced management. Their children were launched into lives of their own. They had achieved everything they had dreamed of and more. One spring morning, Sophia woke early and slipped out of bed without waking Marcus. She dressed quietly and walked outside into the pre-dawn darkness. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of new grass and wildflowers. She walked the path down to the creek, the same creek where Marcus had found her 17 years ago. She sat on a flat rock, the same one she had sat on that desperate evening when she had cried out all her fear and despair. The creek burbled past, unchanged by the years, indifferent to human joy and sorrow. But Sophia had changed. That frightened girl was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her own worth, who had built a life of meaning and purpose. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Marcus approaching. He sat down beside her on the rock and took her hand without speaking. They watched together as the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "What made you come down here?" Marcus finally asked. "I wanted to remember," Sophia said. "That girl I was. How lost and alone I felt. How certain I was that I had nothing to offer anyone." She squeezed his hand. "I wanted to remember so I could be grateful, so I would never take this life we have built for granted." "I think about that too," Marcus admitted, "about how easily I could have missed you. How different my life would be if I had chosen a different path that day or ridden past without stopping." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Every good thing in my life traces back to that moment when I saw you sitting here. You are my greatest blessing, Sophia." They sat together as the sun climbed higher, warming the air and bringing the world to life around them. Birds sang in the cottonwood trees, and somewhere in the distance, they could hear the lowing of cattle. It was an ordinary morning on the ranch, like thousands of mornings before it and thousands still to come. But it was also extraordinary because they were experiencing it together. Because they had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from nothing but love and determination. "We should get back," Marcus said eventually. "Emma will be up soon, demanding breakfast." "She gets that from you," Sophia teased. "You are always hungry." "I am a hard-working man," Marcus protested. "I need my strength." They walked back to the house hand in hand, their shadows stretching long in the morning light. At the porch steps, Marcus pulled Sophia close and kissed her, a sweet kiss full of familiarity and affection. "I love you," he said. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that." "I love you too," Sophia replied. "Forever." They went inside to begin another day, another chapter in the story they were writing together. The coffee needed making, the chickens needed feeding, and 1,000 other small tasks waited. But none of it felt like drudgery because they did it together, partners in every sense of the word. The years that followed were marked by the joys and sorrows that come to every family. They celebrated the births of grandchildren, Matthew and Elizabeth giving them 3 grandsons in quick succession. They mourned when Marcus's aunt passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78. They weathered droughts and market downturns, learning to adapt and persevere. Daniel eventually returned from his wanderings, 30 years old and ready to settle down. He had traveled from Montana to California and back again, working ranches and cattle drives, seeing the world he had dreamed of. He came home with stories that kept the family entertained for hours and a quiet maturity that showed how much he had grown. "There is no place like this," he told his parents on his first night back. "I have seen mountains and oceans, big cities and wild country. But this ranch, this valley, this is home. I did not truly understand that until I left." Marcus smiled and clapped his son on the shoulder. "There is always a place for you here, son. Always." Daniel settled into ranch life, taking over much of the daily management and allowing Marcus to slow down a bit. Marcus was in his mid-50s now, and while still strong and capable, he appreciated having help with the heavier work. Sophia also began to slow down, though she still maintained her garden and kept the house running smoothly. Emma, now a teenager, took over much of the cooking and cleaning, learning from her mother the skills that would serve her in her own home someday. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Matthew and Elizabeth came with their 3 boys. Sarah arrived with her husband and their 2 daughters. Daniel was there, of course, and Emma had invited a young cowboy from a neighboring ranch who had been courting her with Marcus's permission. After the feast that the women had prepared together, Matthew stood and raised his glass. "I want to propose a toast to my parents," he said. "To Marcus and Sophia Oakes, who have shown us all what it means to build a life on love. Pa, you taught me that being a man means being honest, working hard and treating people with respect. Ma, you taught me that strength comes in many forms and that courage sometimes looks like simply refusing to give up. Sarah stood next. You taught me that a woman could be both strong and tender, that I did not have to choose between being capable and being loving. You showed me that a good marriage is one where both people grow together rather than one diminishing so the other can shine. Daniel spoke last. You gave me the freedom to leave and the security of knowing I could always come home. You trusted me to find my own path, and when I did, you welcomed me back without judgment. That is the greatest gift parents can give. Emma, not to be left out, added her own toast. You have filled this house with so much love that it overflows to everyone who enters. Thank you for showing me what I should look for when I choose someone to spend my life with. Marcus and Sophia sat at the head of the table, their eyes bright with tears. They looked at their children and grandchildren, at the life they had created together, and felt the weight of their blessings. Later, when everyone had gone home or to bed, Marcus and Sophia walked out to the porch one last time. The sky was brilliant with stars, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of sage and pinyon pine. 25 years, Sophia marveled. Half my life spent with you. The better half, Marcus said with certainty, for both of us. Do you remember what you said to me that first day? Sophia asked. When I told you I had nothing, I said, good, then you want me, not my land, Marcus recalled, and I meant it. I needed to know that whatever was between us was real, not born of desperation or convenience. It was the most romantic thing anyone ever said to me, Sophia admitted. You made me feel valued in a moment when I felt worthless. You saw me, truly saw me, and decided I was worth saving. You saved me too, Marcus said softly. I was drowning in loneliness and did not even know it. You brought light back into my life. Joy, purpose, everything that matters. They stood together on the porch, looking out over the land they had worked so hard to build into something lasting. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, passed down to their children and grandchildren. But more than land and cattle, they were leaving a legacy of love, an example of what marriage could be when two people chose each other freely and completely. As they finally went inside to bed, Marcus paused at the threshold and looked back one last time at the starlit valley. Thank you, he whispered, to God or fate or the universe itself. Thank you for bringing her to me. In bed, Sophia curled against Marcus's side, fitting perfectly into the curve of his body as she had done for 25 years. His arm came around her automatically, pulling her close. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Marcus replied. Today, tomorrow, and always. They drifted off to sleep, content in the knowledge that they had found what most people only dreamed of: true love, real partnership, a life built on honesty, respect, and genuine affection. The years continued to pass, marked now by the milestones of their grandchildren's lives. Marcus taught his grandsons to ride and rope, passing on the skills his father had taught him. Sophia showed her granddaughters how to sew and cook, sharing the knowledge that her mother had shared with her. The circle continued, generation blessing generation. When Marcus turned 60, he officially turned over management of the ranch to Daniel and Matthew, though he still spent his days working alongside them. Sophia finally allowed Emma to take over most of the household duties, spending her time instead in the garden she loved and with her grandchildren, who adored their grandmother's stories and gentle wisdom. They had been married 32 years when Marcus fell ill. It started as a cough that would not go away, then progressed to weakness and fatigue. The doctor from Clifton came to examine him and confirmed what they all feared. Pneumonia had settled in Marcus's lungs, and at his age, the prognosis was uncertain. Sophia refused to leave his side. She sat by his bed day and night, bathing his feverish skin and coaxing him to drink broth. The children came daily, but Sophia was the constant, the anchor that Marcus clung to as he fought his way through the illness. On the third night, when his fever was at its worst, Marcus opened his eyes and looked at Sophia with surprising clarity. "Do not let me go," he whispered. "I am not ready to leave you." "Then stay," Sophia said fiercely, gripping his hand. "Stay with me, Marcus. I need you. We all need you." "Tell me about that first day again," he said. "When I found you by the creek." Sophia understood what he needed. He needed to be reminded of the life they had built, the love they had shared. She began to talk, telling him the story of how they met, how he had offered her kindness when she needed it most. She talked about their courtship, their wedding, the births of their children. She recounted memories both grand and simple, weaving the tapestry of their shared life. Marcus listened, his eyes never leaving her face, and slowly his breathing eased and his fever began to break. By morning, he was sleeping naturally, and the doctor pronounced him past the crisis. The recovery was slow, but Marcus was stubborn. He refused to be an invalid, pushing himself to regain his strength. Sophia was there every step of the way, encouraging and cajoling and occasionally scolding him when he tried to do too much too soon. 6 weeks after he first fell ill, Marcus was able to walk down to the creek unassisted. Sophia went with him and they sat together on the old flat rock, the site of so many important moments in their life together. "I was not ready," Marcus said, "to leave you, to leave this life we built. But someday I will be, and when that day comes, I want you to know something." "Do not talk like that," Sophia protested, but Marcus gently touched her lips to quiet her. "Let me say this while I can," he insisted. "When my time comes, whether that is tomorrow or 20 years from now, I want you to know that every moment with you was worth living. You made my life complete, Sophia. You gave me everything I never knew I needed. And I want you to promise me that when I am gone, you will not stop living. Keep the garden, watch the grandchildren grow, let yourself be happy. That would be my final gift to you." Tears streamed down Sophia's cheeks. "I promise," she whispered. "But you have to promise me something too. Promise me that we have more time, that I get to grow old with you, not just remember you." "I promise to stay as long as I can," Marcus said. "That is all any of us can promise." He kept that promise. Marcus lived another 18 years, long enough to see all his grandchildren grown and several great-grandchildren born. He worked the ranch until his mid-70s, finally retiring fully when his body told him it was time. Sophia remained his constant companion through it all. They grew old together, their hair turning silver and their bodies slowing down, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it grew stronger, refined and purified by the passage of time. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the family threw an enormous celebration. People came from all over Arizona to honor the couple who had become something of a local legend. 50 years of marriage was rare enough, but 50 years of obvious, genuine love was extraordinary. Marcus and Sophia sat in chairs of honor while their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren paraded past, each one sharing what the couple meant to them. The testimonies went on for hours, stories of kindness and wisdom and example. When it was finally their turn to speak, Marcus struggled to his feet, waving away help. He took Sophia's hand and pulled her up beside him. 50 years ago, I married the woman of my dreams, he said, his voice still strong despite his age. I knew that day that I was getting something precious. But I had no idea just how precious. Sophia has been my partner, my comfort, my greatest supporter, and my best friend. She has made every single day worth living. He turned to look at her, and the love in his eyes made everyone in the room fall silent. You told me you were penniless when we met. You thought that made you worthless. but you were the richest woman I ever met, rich in all the ways that actually matter. You had courage and integrity, kindness and strength. You had love to give, even when life had given you every reason to become bitter and closed off. You were the treasure, Sophia, not my land or my cattle. You, Sophia was crying openly now. And you, she managed to say, you saw that treasure when I could not see it in myself. You made me believe I was worth loving. You gave me a home, a family, and a life beyond my wildest dreams. Thank you, Marcus Oakes. Thank you for stopping by that creek 50 years ago. Thank you for seeing me. They kissed then, these two people who had spent half a century together, and everyone watching felt their eyes grow misty. This was what love looked like when it endured. This was the goal, the dream that everyone hoped for but few achieved. Marcus lived to see his 80th birthday, a milestone he celebrated surrounded by 4 generations of family. He was frail by then, his body worn out from decades of hard work, but his mind remained sharp, and his love for Sophia never wavered. He died peacefully one morning in early spring, 78 years old, and lying in the bed he had shared with Sophia for 5 decades. She was with him, holding his hand as she had held it through every important moment of their life together. "I love you," were his last words. "Today, tomorrow, and always." "I love you too," Sophia whispered back. "Forever." And then he was gone, slipping away as gently as morning mist burning off in sunlight. Sophia sat with him for a long time, memorizing every line of his beloved face, saying goodbye to the man who had been her whole world for 53 years. The grief was profound, but so was the gratitude. They had been given more than most people ever got. More time, more love, more happiness. Sophia mourned as was right and proper, but she did not collapse into despair. Marcus would not have wanted that, and she had promised him she would keep living. She stayed on the ranch, surrounded by family who loved her and checked on her daily. She still tended her garden, though she worked more slowly now. She spent time with her great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their great-grandfather and the life they had built together. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Sophia walked down to the creek one last time. She was 86 years old, her body bent with age but her spirit still strong. She sat on the flat rock and let the memories wash over her. She remembered the desperate girl she had been, certain her life was over before it had truly begun. She remembered Marcus riding up on Bella, offering kindness to a stranger. She remembered his words that had changed everything. "Good, then you want me, not my land." Those words had freed her to love purely, to choose with her heart, and what a choice it had been. What a life they had created together. Sophia looked up at the sky, blue and infinite, and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly, "for all of it, every moment, every memory, every blessing." It was more than enough. It was everything. She closed her eyes and let the sun warm her face, content in the knowledge that she had lived a life worth living. She had loved and been loved in return. She had built something lasting, not just in land and family, but in the example of what two people could create when they chose each other freely and loved each other completely. That evening, Sophia passed away in her sleep, surrounded by family who held her hands and whispered their love. She went peacefully, a smile on her face, joining Marcus in whatever lay beyond. They buried her next to him on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under the shade of a cottonwood tree. Their graves were marked with simple headstones that bore their names and dates, along with a single inscription that told their whole story. They chose love. The ranch continued, passed down through the generations as Marcus and Sophia had always intended. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren kept the land and preserved the memory of the couple who had started it all. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light was just right. People swore they could see two figures walking hand in hand down to the creek, still together in whatever way such things were possible. Still choosing love, still choosing each other, forever bound by a promise made when one penniless woman and one lonely cowboy found exactly what they needed in each other. Their story became the stuff of family legend, passed down through generations as an example of what real love looked like. It was not always easy or perfect, but it was genuine and lasting. Built not on wealth or status or convenience, but on the simple truth that they wanted each other for exactly who they were. Good, then you want me, not my land. Those words echoed through the years, a testament to a truth that transcended time. Real love could not be bought or bartered. It could only be given freely, and when it was, it created something more valuable than all the gold in the mountains. It created a legacy that would endure long after land and buildings crumbled to dust. Marcus and Sophia Oakes had found that truth by a creek in Arizona Territory in 1883, and they had spent the rest of their lives proving that it was real. Their story ended not with their deaths, but with the continuation of everything they had built. Their children carried on their values, their grandchildren followed their example, and their great-grandchildren kept alive the memory of a love that had transformed two lives and created something beautiful from nothing but honesty, courage, and an unwavering commitment to choosing each other every single day. In the end, that was the greatest legacy anyone could leave. Not land or money or fame, but the memory of a love so genuine and complete that it inspired everyone who witnessed it to reach for the same thing in their own lives. Marcus and Sophia Oakes had lived well and loved completely, and their story would be told for generations to come. A reminder that real love was possible, even in the hardest of times and places, if two people were brave enough to choose it.